want to read but it's little pages, so I'm gonna read because I got it ages. Hello everyone, my name is Stonsey Boy and welcome back to Reading with Stonsey. Today we're reading part 2. Not all of it, of course, because goodness, you can't get that out of me. Today we're going to be reading pages 86 to 100. So, or 84 to 100. I don't know what it says on there, I'll be honest. I'm on Cookie Clicker again. You have an addiction, Marty. You have an addiction. You're on page 84, going to 100, Marty. You have an addiction. I know I have an addiction. It is the Cookie Clicker, dang it. So, yeah. Well, that's why that's like that. I don't know who Marty is. I don't even know what I was referencing there. But I do know that it's finally time to start this episode. Part 2. Or just 2. The girl, strange to call her Inara, when he knows it isn't her real name, is still asleep, her face buried in the collar of his jacket. When Victor arrives and checks on the yawning night shift tech analyst, one of the techs hands him a stack of messages, reports of the hospital throughout the night. From the agents out of the property, background on as many players as possible. He sorts them through as he drinks his cafeteria coffee, marginally better than the questionable still left standing in the pot in the team kitchen, trying to match the pictures of the names of the girls' stories. It's barely 6 o'clock when Yvonne enters, her eyes puffy with a lack of sleep. Good morning, Agent Hanoverin. Your shift doesn't start till 8. Why aren't you sleeping? The tech analyst just shakes her head. Couldn't sleep. I sat up all night in my daughter's room, rocking in the chair and staring at her. If someone ever... She shakes her head again, more sharply this time, as if slouching of the bad thoughts. I left as soon as my mother-in-law was awake enough to deal with the baby. He considers telling her to find an office to take a nap, but then he doubts anyone on the team slept well last night. He certainly didn't. Plagued with the hallway photos and distant memories of his daughters running around the yard wearing costume butterfly wings, it's easier for the horrors to catch up once you have nothing to do. Victor hefts a canvas bag to his feet. I have a fresh-made cinnamon roll for you if you do me a favor, he says, and watches her stand straight with sudden energy. Holly gave me clothes for an hour. Think you could walk her down to the lockers and let her shower? Your daughter is an angel. She glances through the glass at the sleeping girl. I hate to wake her up, though. Better you than Edison. She walks out in the tech room without another word, and a moment later the door of the interview room opens with the slightest squeak. It's enough. The girl sits up with a tangle of her hair in a blanket. Her back is against the wall until she identifies Yvonne, standing in the doorway with her hands out and open. They stare at each other until Yvonne tries a small smile. Good reflexes. He used to stand in doorways sometimes. He always seemed disappointed if you didn't realize he was there. She yawns and stretches, joints popping and cracking in an uncomfortable cot. We thought you might appreciate a shower, says Yvonne, holding out a canvas bag. We got some clothing that will fit well enough and some soaps. I could kiss you if you were into that sort of thing. On her way to the door, she taps against the glass. Thank you, FBI Special Agent in Charge Victor Hanoverin. He laughs but doesn't try to answer. While she's gone, he moves into an interview room to continue parsing through the new information. Another of the girls had died in the night, but the rest are expected to live. And counting Inara, that makes for a total of 13. 13 survivors, perhaps 14, depending on what she could tell him of the boy. If he's the gardener's son, if he was part of what his father and brother did. But he's still in the locker room when Edison comes in, cleanly shaven and wearing a suit this time. He drops the box of danishes on the table. Where is she? Yvonne has her down at the showers. Think she'll let us tell us anything today? In her own way. He snorts, tells him that his partner thinks of that idea. Yes, well, he hands him a stack of papers already gone through. For the time, the only sounds are shuffling of pages and an occasional slurp of coffee. Ramirez says Senator Kingsley has set up camp in a hospital lobby, Edison says a few minutes later. Saw that. He says the daughter didn't want to see the senator, claimed she wasn't ready. Saw that too. Victor drops his paper on the table and rubs his eyes. Can you blame her? She grew up on camera, with everything she did reflecting on her mother. Who knows? Probably better than any of the others. The media blitz waiting for them. Seeing her mother is the start of that. Ever wonder if we're really the good guys? Don't let her get to you. He grins at the partner's startled look. Do we have a perfect job? No. Do we do a perfect job? No. It isn't possible. But we do our job, and at the end of the day, we do a hell of a lot more good than harm. And Ara's good at deflecting. You can let her get her under your skin. Edison reads another report before saying anything. Patrice Kingsley, Ravenna, told Ramirez she wants to talk to Maya before taking a decision about her mother. Wanting advice or someone to make a decision for her? Didn't say, Vic. Victor waits him out. How do we know she isn't like Lorraine? She took the girls. How do we know she isn't to please the gardener? We don't, admits Vic. Yet, in another way, we'll find out. Before we die of old age. The senator agent rolls his eyes and turns back to the papers. It's a different girl who finally re-enters with Yvonne, her hair combed in a straight fall on her hips. The jeans don't quite fit, tied across her hips with the buttons undone to give it a little more space. Uh, but layer edges of tank tops mostly cover that, and the mossy green sweater hugs soft curves. Thin flip-flops flap quietly against the floor as she walks. The bandages are off, and Victor winces at the purple red burns on the wrapped around her hands, marked through the gashes from glass and debris from her escape. She follows his gaze to her hands and holds him up to further inspection. She drops into her seat at the far side of the table. They feel worse than they look, but the doctor said as long as I'm not stupid, I won't see any loss of function. How is the rest of you? There are some lovely bruises, and the stitches are a little pink and tender around the edges, but not really swollen. A doctor would probably give him a look-see at some point. But I'm alive, which is more I could say about a lot of people I know. She's expecting him to start out with the boy. He could see in her face and the tension of the shoulders, and the way her fingertips press over the scabs of the opposite hand. He prepared for that, so instead he pushes across the remaining cup, hot chocolate rather than coffee, giving her distaste for it yesterday. And opposite, the tinfoil, wrapping on the rolls. He hands one to Yvonne, who murmurs a thank you and retreats to the observation room. Inara brows pull together at the sight, her head tilting as a bird as she studies its contents. What kind of bakery wraps things in aluminum? The bakery known as my mother. Your mother made your breakfast? Her mouth doesn't move in something that might be a little smile than less shock. Did she make your lunch in a little brown sack too? Even wrote a note telling me I made good choices today. He lies with a straight face, and she rolls her lips at the top of the smile from growing. But you never had that, did you? He continues more softly. Once, she corrected, and there's no trace of the humor now. The couple across the street took me in the bus station, right? That made me a lunch, and inside there was a note saying how glad they were to know me, how much they'd miss me. Their phone number was there, and they asked me to call them when I got to Grand's and let them know I was safe. Call them whenever I wanted, just to talk. They signed it with hugs, both of them, and even the baby had a crayon scribble on the bottom. You didn't call, did you? Once, she says again, almost a whisper. Her fingertips trace the lines of each cut and dash. When I got to the station near Grand's, I called them to tell them I'd gotten there. They asked to speak to Grand, but I said that she was arranging for the taxi. They told me to call as often as I wanted. I stood at the curb of the station waiting for the taxi and kept staring at the silly piece of paper. Then I threw it away. Why? Because keeping it felt too much like hurting myself. She sits up in her chair, crossing her legs with a knee, and leans her elbows against the table. You seem to have a strange image of me as a lost child, like I've been thrown to the side of the road like garbage, or roadkill. But kids like me, we're not lost. We may be only ones who never are. We always know exactly where we are and where we can go, and where we can't. Victor shakes his head, unwilling to argue the point, but equally incapable of agreeing with it. Why didn't you girls in New York report you missing? She rolls her eyes. We didn't have that kind of relationship. But you were friends. Yes, friends who were all running from other things. Before I moved in, the bed was vacant because the last girl suddenly picked up and left. Hard on her heels, his pissed off uncle who wanted to know what she'd done with the baby he'd raped into the 3 years before. No matter how careful you hide, there's always someone who could find you. Only if they're looking. Or if you're just really that unlucky. What do you mean? Asked Edison. What do you think I wanted, a gardener to kidnap me? The whole city to disappear in? But he found me. That doesn't explain. It does, she says simply. If you're a certain kind of person. Uh, Victor sips his coffee, trying to decide if she should push the conversation in a necessary direction or let it go what may or may not prove to be a useful one. What kind of person, Inara? He prompts eventually. If you expect me to be overlooked and forgotten, or always at least a little surprised when someone remembers you, you're always outside understanding the strange creatures who actually expect people to remember and come back. He makes her time then, eating her cinnamon roll, but Victor can tell she isn't finished with the thought yet. Maybe it wasn't fully formed yet. His youngest daughter, who's still do that sometimes, just trail off until she knows the rest of the words. He wasn't sure if that's another reason, but it's still a pattern he knows. You see, so he kicks Edison under the table, keeping him silent when his partner's mouth opens. Edison glares at him and scoots his chair several inches away, but says nothing. Sophia's girl expected her to come back, he continues softly. She licks the icing off her injured fingers and winces. They've been in their foster family they've been there for nearly 4 years when I was taken. And anyone could have understood if they'd given up hope. They didn't, though. No matter what happened, no matter how bad things got, they knew there was fighting for them. She knew that she will always come back for them. I don't get it. I don't think I ever will, but then I never had a Sophia. But you have Sophia. Had, she corrects. It's not the same. I'm not her daughter. Her family, though, yes. Friends, it's not the same. He's not sure if he believes that. He's not sure if she does either. Maybe it's easier for her to pretend she does. Your girls always believe you'll come home, don't they, Agent Hanoveran? She smooths a hand along the soft sleeve of the sweater. They're afraid that one day you might die in the line of duty, but they don't believe anything could help keep you if you were still alive. Keep your mouse off his girls, snaps Edison, and she smirks. You can see his girls in his eyes every time he looks at me or one of those pictures. They're why he does what he does. Yes, they are, Victor says, finishing his coffee. And one of them said along something else for you. He reaches his pocket and pulls out a tube of deep berry lip gloss. This is from my eldest, who also gave the clothing. It startles a smile from her, a real one that makes her whole face shine for a few seconds, her amber freckled eyes crinkling in the corners. Lip gloss? She said it's a girl thing. I'd hope so. This is a very unflattering shade on you. Gingerly unscrewing the cap, she squeezes the tube until the bead of shimmering color oozes at the end. She rolls it along her lower lip, managing the upper with no mess and missed spaces despite her eyes never going a one-way mirror. We used to do our makeup on the train on our way to work. Most of us could do our full face and without ever looking in a mirror. I have to admit, it's something I've ever tried, he says dryly. Edison straightens his stack of papers, lining the edges precisely with the edge of the table. Victor watches him, uses his partner's compulsions, but is still musing. Edison sees him watching and frowns. Inara, Victor says finally, and reluctantly opens her eyes. We need to start. Des? She sighs. He nods. Tell me about Desmond. I was only one who liked to find the high places in the garden, so I was wanting to find the other garden. Up on the little cliff there was a small stand of trees, and by the stand, I mean 5, that grew right up against the glass. At least a couple times a week I climbed one of the trees and sat onto the highest curves of the branches as to support me. I pressed my cheek against the glass. Sometimes if I closed my eyes I could pretend I was out on the fire escape, against our bank of windows, hearing Sophia talk about her girls, or listening to a boy in another building play violin, as Catherine sat beside me. To my front and left I could see almost the entire garden, except for the hallways that wrapped around us and were hidden by the edge of the cliff in the afternoon. I could see the girls playing tag or hide and seek along the stream, one or two floating in a small pond, sitting among the rocks or bushes, with books or crosswords and various things. But I could also see out of the garden just a little. As far as I could tell, the greenhouse we called the garden was actually one of 2. One inside, the other like nesting dolls. Ours was the one in the center, and possibly tall, with our hallways wrapped around the square. The ceilings to our rooms were especially high, but the walls rose all the way up in the trees of the cliff, black and flat-topped, and on the other side, another glass roof slopping down over another greenhouse. It was more of a border than a proper square of its own, broad path lined, at least on the side I could see, with plant life. It was hard to see even from the tops of the trees, with silver here or there, but there's an angle just right. In that greenhouse was the real world, with gardeners. No one hid from the doors that led outside, where the seasons changed and life didn't count on down to 21. The real world had not the gardener, but the man non-butterflies knew him to be, a man who involved with arts and philanthropy and some kind of business venture, or rather, many kinds of business ventures, from what he sometimes hinted. That man had a house somewhere in the property, not visible even from the trees. That man had a wife and a family. Well, he had Avery, and clearly the asshole had to come from somewhere, but still. There was a wife? There was a wife. And she and the gardener walked through the outer greenhouse together almost every afternoon from 2 to 3, her hand tucked through the elbow for support. She was slender and almost to the point of slickness, with dark hair and impeccable style. From so far away that was all I could see. They walked slowly around the edge of the square, stopping from time to time to inspect the flower plant more closely, then slowly walk on until they passed from the limited range of sight. They'd be back once or twice more before their walk was done. She was the one who determined their pace, and whenever she lagged, he turned to her solicitously. It was the same tenderness he showed to his butterflies, soft and sincere, in the way that he sent spiders crawling under my skin. It was the same tenderness in which he touched the glass of the display cases, in which he wept over Evita. It was the way his hands trembled when he saw that Avery had done to me. It was love, and he knew it. 2 or 3 times a week, Avery accompanied them, trailing along behind and rarely staying in the full hour. He usually just did a single revolution, and then walked into the garden, where he looked for someone who was sweet and innocent, who could easily give him the fear he craved. And twice a week, on constructive days that were the same as our maintenance mornings, there was a younger son, and his mother's dark hair and slim build. As with his mother, the detail was lost to distance, but it was clear she doted on him. And when he joined them, she moved between her husband and younger son. For months, I watched them unobserved, until one day the gardener looked up, right at me. I kept my cheek pressed against the glass, curled with the leaves high on my tree, and didn't move. There was another 3 days before we spoke of it, and then only over the bed of a stranger, not even a butterfly. Victor takes a deep breath, pushing away the bizarre image of normalcy. Most of the sickos he arrests seems normal on the surface. He'd kidnapped another girl? She took several a year. He took several a year, but never until the precious one was fully marked and more or less settled in. Why? Why he took several a year? Or why he'd waited between them? Yes, Victor tells her, and she smirks. For the first, attrition. He never took more than a garden could support. So generally, he only went shopping when one of the butterflies died. And that wasn't always the case. But usually, for the second, he shrugs and lets her lip balms flat against the table, studying and stripping of burned tissue across the back. A new girl was a stressful time in the garden. Everyone got on edge, remembering their own kidnapping and how it was when they woke up the first time. And then the inevitable tears would just make it all worse. Once a new girl settled, things were quiet for a while, until the next death, and the next wings on display, the next new girl. Gardner was always, mostly, exquisitely sensitive to the prevailing mood in the garden. Is that why he allowed Lionel to act as a guide? Because it helped, yes. But then how did you end up doing it? Because someone had to, and Bliss was so angry, the rest of us too skittish. It wasn't the girl after me, but the next one that I first helped with. Because Avery had brought the flu into the garden and was cutting a hell of a swath through the girls. Lionette was a train wreck. She was pale and sweating, her tawny hair plastered on her neck and face, and the toilet bowl was much truer friend than I could ever be. Bliss and I told her to stay in bed, and let the gardener deal with his own mess for once, but as soon as the walls lifted and let us out of our rooms, she pulled on clothes and staggered out into the hallway. Swearing, I tried on a dress and jogged after her. I could loop one of her arms around my shoulder. She was so dizzy she couldn't walk without keeping a hand on the wall. She didn't flinch away from the display cases like she usually did when, even almost after 5 years. Why does it have to be you? Because it has to be someone, she whispered, and stopped swallow back her need to vomit. Again, even though she was kneeling in front of me on the toilet for most of the past 18 hours. I didn't agree. Not at that point. Maybe not ever. The gardener was very, very good at guessing ages. Better than the carnival whack I'd ever heard of. The real girls came in at 17, but most were 16. He wouldn't kidnap younger, and if he thought there was a chance of 15 or less, he said he'd choose someone else, but if he tried to go any older, I guess he wanted a full 5 years whenever possible. The things the man felt comfortable talking about was captives, or maybe just with me. The new girl was in the room was every bit as naked as the one I'd woken up in. Mine was slowly starting to accumulate personal touches, but for now she had a plain gray fitted sheet and nothing else. Her skin tone was dark, and combined with the cast of her features, suggested mixed race, Mexican and African. But I'd find out later. She wasn't much of a taller than Bliss, and except for the rather astonishing set of tits that looked like they'd been quinceanera gift, she was reed slender. Small holes marched all the way up one ear and most of the other. Another hole in the edge of her nostril, yet another around her navel suggested that she'd been pierced as well. Why did he take them all out? Maybe he thought they were tacky, groaned Lionette, sinking into the floor beside the unshielded toilet. My ears were double pierced. I came, still are. Maybe he thinks yours are classy. Plus the cartilage stuff on the right. Don't be a bitch. This is rough enough, all right. Surprisingly, that actually was enough to make me stop. It wasn't just that she was clearly pathetic at the moment, but also the undercurrent. Trying to make sense of why the gardener did what he did was an exercise in futility. And completely unnecessarily besides. We didn't know why. We just needed to know what. Not that you're actually capable of going anywhere, but wait here. She flapped her hand and closed her eyes. There were two refrigerators in the kitchen attached in our dining room. One held our meal ingredients and the other kept locked. Lorraine having the only key, the other held drinks and snacks that were allowed to be between meals. I grabbed a couple bottles of water for Lionette and a juice for myself, then pillaged a book from the library to read aloud to her while we waited for the new girl to wake up. There was a library? Edison asked incredulously. Well, yeah, he wanted us to be happy there. That meant keeping us occupied. What kind of books did he give you? Whatever we asked for, really. He shrugged and sat us back into her chair, arms crossed and loosely over her chest. It was mostly classics at first, but those of us who genuinely enjoyed reading started a wish list by the doorway. And every now and then he'd add a few dozen or so volumes, and some of us had personal books, directed gifts from him that stayed in our rooms. And you were one of the readers? She starts to give him a disgusted look and reconsiders. Oh, right. You weren't here for that part. What part? The part where I explained that being in the garden was usually boring as fuck. And if that's boring, you're clearly not doing it right, he mutters and startles a laugh out of her. It wasn't boring when it was my choice, she admits, but that was before the garden. Victor knows he would drag the conversation back to the original question, but the sight of two of them agreeing about something was far too entertaining. But so he lets it go, and even ignores a slight trace of a lie on the girl's face. And I suppose your favorite was Poe? Oh no, Poe had a purpose, to distract. I like the fairy tales, not the watered-down Disney shit, and the sanitized parallel versions I like the real ones. These horrible ones happen to everyone, and you really understood it wasn't intended for children. No illusions? Victor asks, and she nods. Exactly. I know it's not the exact ending of the book that we really wanted, but, or like, not the book, I'm sorry. The exact ending of today's episode that we were trying to shoot for, but you know, it's okay. Because if I were to read some and then do it next time, we'd be at a weird standstill. Where we're not in a weird standstill is that today we read pages 84 to 100. Well, it should really say 88 to 100 because there were some blank pages for some reason. But whatever. Next time we'll be reading pages 101 to 12. To 12? They ask Stonsey, looking a little confused. Don't you mean da 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 120. I do mean that, viewer. Very good eye. Very good. 101 to 120. So we're back to the regular. And we're not breaking out of this regular until episode 13. AKA pages 200. Nope. We're still in that regular, actually. Never mind. Page 12, where we do 221 to 239. So such a difference, you know? But what is different is that today we're learning, well, it's not different, but we're going to be learning about a different animal. We're learning about reading corner of the day, doing it up Stonesey's way, Bob. Today we are learning about the, where's my, well, honestly, I don't know what we're learning about. Where's my bookmark? Okay. Oh, it's right here. It just wouldn't fall out. Today we're learning about the Great Dane. Great Danes are I find them very beautiful, breeds of dogs. Because they are, just genuinely super, like, kind, and they're big as well, like, they're really tall and stuff like that. I like them. I think they're cute. I mean, I don't know what else to say about them. I like Great Danes. They're awesome. Not as much as I like you, Bubba. He's at my door looking at me. But they're too tall. But before I can make fun of or have an opinion on anything, I should know of its history. Not only does it make me smart in front of my mom, my dad, my sister, my brother, or my basset hound who's looking at me through the doorway, very disappointed, because I'm talking about another breed of dog besides his own, but it also makes me more intelligent. Now, intelligence doesn't necessarily lie in just knowing things, but it also lies in knowing and teaching them to others. That's why some of the smartest people you ever meet are teachers and doctors. Though there are some dumb doctors and there are some dumb teachers, I like to say socially is the reason, but there could be many other reasons. Now, the history of the Great Dane is that it's dubbed the Apollo of dogs. The Great Dane is probably the product of ancient Molossus war dog and the Greyhound. With these ancestors, its ability as a fearless big game hunter seems only natural. By the 14th century, these dogs are proving themselves to be able hunters in Germany, combining speed, stamina, strength, and courage in order to bring down the tough wild boar. The dogs became popular in the landed gentry, not only because of their hunting ability, it was also because of their imposing yet graceful appearance. These noble dogs made gracious additions to any estate. British familiar with the breed first revered them as German boarhounds. Exactly when and why the breed was later dubbed the Great Dane is a mystery because, although undeniably great, it's not Danish. It is a German breed. In 1880, German authorities declared the dog should only be referred to as a Deutsche Dogge, a name by which it still goes in Germany. The English paid no heed and the old name stuck for the English-speaking world. By the late 1800s, the Great Dane had come to America. It quickly attracted attention as it does to the very day. The breed has since achieved great popularity in spite of some of the challenges owning a giant dog entails. I sadly couldn't get a good picture of what the dog's height, but I do think the person to the dog maybe is good. I think that person's like 5 something. So that, I guess, gets a good... We'll learn about the height proper later. But yeah. Now, what's the temperament? How do I keep this great giant... Hi. Hello. What do you want, fat butt? You wagging your tail? Are you ruining my audio by clomping around? Is that what you're doing? Where'd you go? What are you doing? Okay, lay down. Thank you. What's the temperament? How do I keep this Great Dane in check? Well, the Great Dane is spirited, courageous, friendly, and dependable. It is generally good with children, although its friendly overtures may overwhelm a small child. and usually friendly towards other household dogs and pets. But like the large dogs that would be supervised with training, it makes a pleasant, well-mannered family companion. That's all we need to know about them, apparently. My dog is still making a lot of noise. I don't know if you guys can hear that or not. But yeah. What you doing? Smell my blanket. That's what he's doing. I don't know what the heck he smells in there, though. Well, what's the upkeep? How do I keep my big old doggy in check? And not my big old doggy, because he's on a bed trying to figure out how to eat my sheets. Which is not very nice, by the way. Sorry. Well, the upkeep is that the Great Dane needs daily moderate exercise. It needs to be met with a good walker romp. Despite its sturdy appearance, it's not well suited in living outdoors and is best suited to divide its time between indoors and out. Inside, it needs soft bedding and sufficient room to stretch out when sleeping. Some tend to drool. Coat care is minimal. We love to hear it. What we don't love to hear is that if you're a child listening to this, please cover your ears. Teenager or an adult, we need to talk about the health section. There's a lot. This is the most section I've ever had for any breed of dog. So, yep. Basically, we're going to talk about the concerns, and there's a big note given to us by the writer of the Encyclopedia of Dog Breeds, Carolyn Coyle, PhD. Major concerns are gastric torsion, cardiomyopathy, myopathy, and osteosarcoma. Minor concerns are CHD, CVIs, Wobbler syndrome, OCD, HOD, and hyperthyroidism. They're occasionally seen with VWD and cataract and trophin. And they're suggested that you take them to the doctor. It should be for the cardiac, hip, eye, and thyroid. Their lifespan is 7 to 10 years. Again, big dog, short life. Weird. And it's a note that Danes are usually bred within 3 separate color families: fawn and brindle, harlequin and mantle, and black and blue. Because dogs of the color families are seldom interbred, each color family tends to have different characteristics and health concerns. Ooh. Alright. Imagine you don't see these pictures in front of you. What's the form? What's the function? What do they do? Well, the form and function of the Great Dane is that a regal breed combines a great size and power with elegance, square proportion, and well-balanced. Gait is strong and powerful with long, easy strides. The attributes are necessary in a dog required to overtake when overpowered, relatively swift and formidable quarry. Its coat is short, thick, and glossy. The Great Dane is most noteworthy for its majestic carriage and appearance of Apollo of dogs. Now, for the final part of today's episode is the tier list. 5 is the best, 4 is better, 3 is average, 2 is worse, and 1 is the worst unless it comes to grooming. We don't have a single 5 today, so Energy level, exercise requirements, and playfulness are all at a 2, so really low, or pretty low. Affection level's at a 4, so they're loving. Friendliness towards dogs and other pets are at a 2, so not very. Friendliness towards strangers is at a 4, so betrayer. Ease of training's at a 3. And protection abilities out of 3, so average. Watchdog abilities out of 4, so yeah. Grooming requirements, which we love to see, is out of 1. Cold tolerance and heat tolerance, though, are both out of 2, so lower than average. The weight of a healthy male Great Dane should be 130 to 180 pounds. Goodness. And female should be 110 to 150 pounds. Still goodness. For the height, a Great Dane male should be at least 30 inches, and preferably 32 or more. Note 32. Most are 32 to 35 inches, and for a female Great Dane, at least 28, preferably 30 inches or more. Note, most are 31 to 33 inches. So they even beat the game, but don't worry, if it was feet, we'd be really living in a world of giants. Not really having to do with giants, but I guess their fur is pretty giant in that regard. And that is the dog we'll be talking about in the next episode. So, hope you guys have a fantastic, wonderful day. Be polite, be efficient, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next time. I'm gonna go eat a pizza. My throat hurts. Bye-bye!